Welcome to Saving Europe. I'm the novelist and historian Henry Viner Brooks, and in this series we're following the lives and travels of two of history's unsung heroes. The decisive leadership shown by the 6th century monk Columbanus and the 20th century statesman Robert Schumann helped rescue Western civilization in two very different dark ages. So, joined by my two sons, I'm on a 4,000-mile, 12-country post-Brexit odyssey to find out if these men and these dark ages can teach us anything for today. This time on Saving Europe, we follow Columbanus and his Irish band as they escape the clutches of Brunhilde and head north to the rival kingdom of Neustria. And in Paris and Jouarre, we will discover the almost forgotten tombs of a Merovingian royal dynasty, and we'll also find out about Columbanus' new royal commission just north of the Alps to Austria, and get to visit two other unique monastic startups near Paris that are associated with him. All this and more, this time on Saving Europe. If you're finding this content helpful, then please return the favour by subscribing, perhaps sharing it with a friend, and also using the links to check out the book that accompanies this series. In Paris, we cycled out of the tourist areas to the less visited Abbey Church of Saint-Germain-des-Prés. We've come here to do some detective work. Incredible as it might be for us to believe, there are many ancient Merovingian kings of France buried in this church, and yet very few people today even know about it. My plan is to find the burial locations for Columbanus' new patron Clothar II, his legendarily wicked mother Queen Fredegund, and her husband King Chilperic I. And if we can do that, then we can explore what happened next in Columbanus' story.
Okay, we're in Saint-Germain-des-Prés, which is an ancient church that was basically once the royal church for burials. I've just borrowed this from a guide, and he says that it's just down here on the left, Chilperic and his wife. There seems to be no record. Clothar was buried here. So there's not many places you can meet the Merovingian monarchs, but some of their bones are still here, even after the destruction of the La Révolution. Look, I think I finally got it. It wasn't back there where they're doing the restoration work. It's here, on this side. This is Fredegond and Chilperic. Chilperic was king just before Columbanus arrived here. They're just down here, so let's go and see if we can find them. Is buried just under column number 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, under this one here. But after the revolution, this church was completely rebuilt, and the old church was thrown into the river. But some of the burials are still marked, so that someone's done a bit of good work there. So, but here at Saint-Germain-des-Prés, Clothar was buried here. How does he come into the story? I'll tell you. So as we know, Columbanus is kicked out by the young king, Theodoric, and the wicked queen Brunhilde, who plays a perfect Jezebel to Columbanus' Elijah. And so he is kicked out, as we know, down Loire. And after that 100-mile journey, and the boat doesn't quite leave at Nantes, he comes north into Neustria, where he finds a new friend, Clothar. I've got a picture of Clothar here. This is a picture of a coin minted, and he looks just like a Roman emperor. Here is a picture of Clothar at the age of 9 going into battle. His mum has a crown on, and so does he. He is quite delighted to have Columbanus. Also, he hears news while he is there of a possible alliance with Theudebert. That's Theodoric's brother, but filled, Jonas says, with the spirit of prophecy, Columbanus says to Clothar, no. Within 3 years, they'll all be dead, and you will be able to have a complete dominion. So he doesn't join in an alliance, and Clotaire pleading with Columbanus to stay in Neustria, but Columbanus says, no, please give me safe passage to Theudebert, Theoderic's brother. Then perhaps I could be given a pass to go over through his territories and over into Italy. So even at this stage, Columbanus wants to get to Italy, but Italy is a long way off. He said we're always on a pilgrimage, and in his case, that was literally true. Jonas, the biographer, goes on. Afterwards, Columbanus received escorts who were to conduct him to Theudebert, and entering upon his journey, he went to the city of Paris, where he arrived, and he met at the gates a man having an unclean spirit who was raving and rending his garments while babbling. From afar he had been crying out for a long time with his growling voice as he saw Columban, the man of God, approaching, and when the latter saw him he said, "Depart, evil one, depart, and do not possess him any longer, and yield to the power of God." And he invoked the name of Christ. But when the devil resisted for a long time with savage and cruel strength, the man of God placed his hands on the man's ear and struck the man's tongue, and by the power of God commanded the devil to depart. And then, rending the man with cruel violence so that bonds could scarcely restrain him, the devil, issuing forth amid great purging and vomiting, made such a stench that those who stood by believed that they could endure the fumes of sulphur more easily. We're just gonna go up the south bank of the river and pick up some bits of dinner and maybe stretch our table out in. Coming out into the rather famous entrance, cycling round. We've had a nice, really glad we brought the bikes to Paris. I think it's good just to be here, you know, that's the amazing thing, is just to actually walk the streets. Not been back here since we came for our first and second wedding anniversaries to Paris. Walked up here, anyway, the second time we were on the Eurotunnel on the train, and we went to this little, in the Latin Quarter, this little meat fondue. Tried to find the same place again, and we did. It took us a bit of time, but by the time we'd finished eating our food, we were too late on the train, and we went to this little...
That evening, as we cycled back to the car and then ate our dinner under the Eiffel Tower, we had time to reflect on the complexities of the revolutionary history associated with the Saint-Germain district of Paris. On the 3rd of September 1783, just around the corner from the church at the Hotel York at 56 Rue Jacob, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams and John Jay met British delegates to sign a treaty which ended the American Revolutionary War. The triumphant Americans posed for a commemorative painting, but the beleaguered British delegates refused, and so the painting was never finished. On the darker side, though, exactly 9 years later to the day, the new revolutionary government of France sent a deputy to the abbey. It was now one of the jails for people suspected of anti-revolutionary sympathy: aristocrats, clergy, foreigners, male, female, young, old. The deputy from the National Convention was accompanied not with writs or legal summons, but rather a band of known criminals. In the first week of September, this was happening all over Paris. Too hasty now to even bother with show trials, families were hacked to pieces with pikes and axes. A horrified Englishman, Arthur Young, recorded that the street outside the prison literally ran red with blood. At that time, Saint-Germain was known as the home of activists like Danton, Desmoulins and Marat and others who met at what was formerly the Cordelier Convent. A privileged and power-laden church which had refused the appeals of men like Columbanus, Martin, Hilary of Poitiers, and later reformers like the Jansenists, was now paying a terrible price for centuries of institutional deafness. Later on in the 20th century, Saint-Germain became the avant-garde neighbourhood of the new philosophers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Simone Beauvoir. But even while these existentialists were taking one stream of enlightened thought culture toward its intellectual conclusions, three different totalitarian ideologies were plumbing the depths of other channels, and they were about to tear Europe apart. I allude to it here because later in the series we will return to this place and these troubling issues when we follow the life of Robert Schumann. But that, as they say, is another story, and our job now is to follow these Irishmen up the Marne River and to see how what on the surface appeared to be inconsequential meetings would later have a surprisingly beneficial historical impact.
Well, to drop the boys at Disney for their treat for the week, a kind of a day off, and I've driven inland about half an hour past Cressy. So there's two abbeys here which have Irish interest and certainly Columban interest. Just coming in now to Famoutier. There's the sign. We're climbing up a hill out of the river valley. I wanted to trace where Columbanus was, and partly it's his legacy. So he came up the Marne River. He stayed with a noble family, and we'll discover that later. And later on today, I'm going to hopefully go to Jouarre, which has got some rare Irish manuscripts. So, look forward to that. Right, it's just up here. I can see the tower. So on his journey from the court of Clothar in Neustria to Theudebert, who was hopefully going to send him upriver, Columbanus stopped with a nobleman called Hagneric. He was filled with wisdom, Jonas tells us, and he also had a daughter, no doubt a beautiful daughter, called Bogundafara. I'll read you what Jonas says. Then Columban came to the city of Meaux, and there he was received with great joy by a nobleman, Hagneric, who was a friend of Theudebert, a wise man and a counsellor grateful to the king. He was fortified with nobility and wisdom. The latter promised that he would take care of Columban until the latter reached the court of Theudebert, and said it was not necessary to have any other companions who were sent by the king, and he declined the aid of the others in order to keep the man of God with himself as long as he could, and in order that his house might be ennobled by the learning of the latter. Columban blessed his house and consecrated to the Lord his daughter Bogundafara, who is still a child, and of whom we shall speak later. So he blesses Bogundafara. Years later she founds this monastery, which is a joint monastery. That means mixed as in men and women, and it's run on the austere rules of Columbanus until the 9th century, when by royal law it's changed to the Benedictine order. There's not much left. Most of the church here is a lot newer, with a lot of 19th century glass. It's had successive fires and it was finally suppressed during the Revolution. So just walked along and I found the door just over here for the abbey. Just says close the door. I've not made an appointment unlike everywhere else. Go see if we can find someone and ask them. Entre piétons. No, thank you for closing the door. So this is what's left. It was refounded, I think, in 1936 by some Benedictines. There's the church where I've just been. One of the things that wrecked this monastery at the beginning of the modern era actually was an economic dispute with the Bishop of Meaux, who I think pretty much ruined the place. See someone moving inside, but no one's come to the door. Actuel. Maybe it's up here.
Amis visitors, si vous avez sonné plusieurs fois,
what I'd love to be able to do is to see some old ruin, you know, see maybe some artifacts. Try that. Oh, bonjour. I parle anglais un peu? Ok. Je parle français très mal. Filming et documentaire about Sainte Colombanos. Oui. C'est possible de filmer à la baie. Yeah, maintenant, ici, à la porte. Oui, à l'escalier. Oh, I see you.
Il y a 2 ans et puis c'est tout passé.
She very kindly offered to show me the back, but most of it's been swept away. La Révolution?
La Révolution.
Yeah.
En fait,
oui.
les
She showed me this wall here.
Vous voyez,
Yes.
c'est resté.
Right, okay. So they took the stones to make
Ouais,
the new abbey.
Pendant un moment, on voyait bien comme ça. Mais là,
Yeah.
depuis 2 ou 3 ans, on n'a pas... L'an dernier, on avait mis du produit sur tous les troncs et c'est reparti comme si on n'avait rien fait.
Désolé. Merci beaucoup. This is an original capital from the... Gosh, I can't believe this so... SF. Santa Farah. So she was called Burgunda Farah, but afterwards it was just named, everything was named Saint Farah, and Farah Moutier, Farah's monastery. In fact, there's amazingly little in the town to think that the whole place was founded by her own particular vision. Columbanus blessed her, and indeed she was, three deers or 3 dogs, another 3, fleur-de-lis, Saint Farah, the bishop's mitre. And she says, if I wait on the stairs, she's going to show me something about the nails of Farah. I didn't quite... Maybe it's a relic of her or something, but we shall see. Here she comes. Ah, right. Yes.
Avant la Révolution, il y avait de l'argent.
Yes.
C'est les reliques.
Yes.
Et il y a une partie des reliques
Yes.
qui sont là, qui sont à Paris, en
Yes.
Italie.
Ah, ok.
Parce qu'à Paris, il y a une grande basilique de Sainte-Phare à Paris.
Ah, in Paris, c'est basilique.
Tout au bout de
Yes.
l'Italie.
Yes.
Assez récente, et puis
Oui.
ça, en fait, ils ont retiré ce qui était beau, quoi.
Yeah. Merci. Okay. Thank you very much. So we got to see the relic of Saint Phare, which ended up in the basilica in Paris, and that was all there kind of was to see. Such a shame.
Vous avez été à Meaux, une exposition sur Saint-Colomban,
In Meaux.
je pense, à la cathédrale de Meaux.
Cathédrale de Meaux. It's Vamimi. Merci. I don't quite remember where. I've been calling it Mieux, but of course it's Meaux. Meaux. Okay. Well, let's go and said there's an exposition about Columbanus in the cathedral there. So I think we've probably got time. I can't remember quite how far you are. So.
I want you to put on the pretty summer dress.
Prince Joar.
It's the body and all the rest. One day you have the music ringing, you know so.
Excitement. I must say I'm enjoying the peace and quiet. Just being able to sit. I'm going to brew up a nice cup of Earl Grey tea before I go and have a look and see what's inside the Abbey at Jouarre. I tell you who put me onto this. It was Alex, dear Alex O'Hara, Columban scholar. he said you must go there. Apparently there is some manuscript survivals and some other bits and pieces I need to see. So, but I cannot do it without some good English tea. Going through the Wikipedia articles about the people. Yeah, it's fascinating. We'll get to it, but there's a guy who was Bishop of Dorchester, and his sister was the abbess here. Was the founding abbess, no less, and he's buried in the crypt. According to Bede, he spent a long time in Ireland for the purpose of studying the scriptures. The Romanesque abbey at Jouarre sits on top of one of France's great historic treasures. There are so few places to see 7th century Merovingian architecture that it makes the carvings on the sarcophagi in the crypt here like the Holy Grail for art historians and boffins like me. To enter that crypt is literally to step back into a lost world. Unfortunately for me, the Office of Tourism closes the crypt on Mondays and Tuesdays, and no amount of pleading in the gift shop, in broken French, was going to get it open. I did, however, get access to the Romanesque Abbey Tower, where I could get a bird's eye view of this once royal city that grew up as a direct result of Columbanus blessing the sons of yet one more hospitable local family. I'll read you what Jonas says. He says, "Thence Columbanus proceeded to Ussy on the river Marne, and there he was received by a man named Antharius, whose wife was named Aga. Now they had sons under the age of 10, whom the mother brought to the man of God to be blessed. He, seeing the faith of the mother, consecrated the little children with his blessing. Then later, when they grew up, they were held in high esteem, first by King Clotaire, afterwards by Dagobert, and after they had obtained great glory in the world, they made haste, lest in the glory of this world they should lose the eternal. The elder Addo withdrew of his own accord and founded, under the rule of Columban, a monastery near Jouarre, near Meaux. The younger Dado founded, under the rule of the Blessed Man, a monastery in Brieg, on the little river Rabais. Now we know that both those brothers held high position under King Dagobert. Indeed, Dado was court treasurer, a sort of chancellor of the exchequer of his day. On his retirement, perhaps remembering Columban's blessing, he provided the financial and political backing for the monastic start-up in Jouarre. But rather like Gregory the Great, he didn't leverage his worldly privilege to make himself abbot, but rather entered as a humble brother. In fact, there was never an abbot at Jouarre, only an abbess, and the first was Theodechildis, who entered with her brother Agilbert in the first intake. And she's not unimportant to us in England. Her brother Agilbert, who's buried in the crypt, held many offices in England. He went to the Saxon king Cenwalh, who'd once been exiled by Penda of Mercia, but had recently come back to rule. He made him Bishop of Dorchester, but it says that he got tired of his barbarous speech because Agilbert couldn't speak the language of these Saxons. So he went north to Northumbria, where he ordained Wilfrid, and both of them were in 664 at the Synod of Whitby, where Agilbert held for the Roman cause, but he let Wilfrid speak for him. Later, he came back here, and he died and was buried in about 680, and his sister was later buried. We're talking about the influence of Columbanus in this part of the world, and also the oddity of the Columban rule. So straight away, this was a double monastery, monks and nuns, but ruled by an abbess, not an abbot. Not only that, but also, and this is actually very surprising considering everything else, they were not under the authority of a bishop in the Middle Ages. In fact, they didn't come under the rule of the bishop until 1690. In 1131, Innocent III, the Pope, visited here,
Such was the fame of this monastic city. And they actually held a synod here, an important synod, in 3 years later. One of the abbesses who ruled this monastery in 1583 was Abbess Charlotte Bourbon. Her father had had 3 daughters, and he had married a Protestant. Well, he wanted to send his daughters away so they wouldn't succumb to their mother's influence. He wanted them raised as nuns. Some say it's because he was a cheapskate and he didn't want to have dowries. Whatever. At the age of 12, one of them came here and she didn't want to come. But her mother had died. And so she came. This is Charlotte. But after the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre, it must have cemented her Protestant faith, and she left, and she caused a scandal to leave a royal monastery. And guess what? She went across to marry William the Silent, William of Orange. Not our William of Orange. We're talking about 100 years before that. But that caused a scandal. He was the chief proponent fighting the Spanish at the time. So all happened from this tiny little place. It's extraordinary.
This is Rebais, and we're looking for an abbey founded by one of those little boys that Columbanus blessed while he passed through this area.
But unfortunately, what had to be the Abbey Church was closed, and even worse, there wasn't any other surviving evidence of what Dado had begun to build here so long ago. Nor did I fare better finding the Columbanus exhibition in the city of New that the nun had told me about. I was too late for the cathedral, and also becoming late for picking up the boys. So, cutting my losses, I followed the Marne east to the south gate of another kingdom that has survived longer than most Merovingian dynasties.
Disney! There they are, they're the boys. So I think we'll just park up somewhere along here and cook up some dinner, I think.
We cooked a quick meal before our long nighttime drive east, following Columbanus on the next leg of his journey into the unknown. And as we watched the firework display over the Disney Palace, I began to consider all that Columbanus was forsaking by leaving the relative safety of Clothar's court. He was heading to Metz, the city where his nemesis Brunhilde had been married, a place where she had, until recently, ruled for her grandson Theudebert. And as we had just heard, there was now concord between Austrasia and Burgundy. Suppose Brunhilde heard about Columbanus' arrival. Supposing she sent knights to rid her of this troublesome priest once and for all. There might be real fireworks awaiting him in Metz. Columbanus was a man of great purpose and faith, there is no doubt. And in Jonah's narrative, he strides across the land like a colossus. But surely this journey must have been, if not for him, then certainly for Gaul and the others, fraught with uncertainty. They had escaped Brunhilde's clutches once, but was it faith or presumption that now led them back into the bear pit?
All this and more next time on Saving Europe. Remember also that this journey was part of the research for a book which uses the lives of Columbanus and Schumann
to explore the unlikely arrival, survival, victory and atrophy of European civilization.
Do follow the links below to find out more.
Please let us know what you thought of this episode, what you liked, what you didn't, what was new to you. Just start a conversation below in the comments section. And of course, if you found the content helpful, then we're pretty sure you're going to like this next one suggested here. But also while you're there, don't forget to help us by subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.